Dear students, in this class, you are going to learn about the nervous system and the functions of the different parts of the nervous system. To give a small introduction of this topic, the nervous system is behind all the functions of the human body, right from thinking, feeling, behaving, our movements, and all our motor activities. It is a physiological network of intercommunicating cells, and it forms the basis of our ability to perceive things, to adapt to the environment, and to interact with the world. This diagram shows the different parts of the nervous system. This is again a diagram, a flow chart, which shows that the nervous system is divided into two main parts, the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. And again, under peripheral nervous system, we have the autonomic nervous system, the somatic nervous system. On the other hand, under the central nervous system, we have the brain and the spinal cord. And under the autonomic nervous system, we have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the brain is divided into three parts, the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Now look at the parts of the nervous system. The spinal cord, they are encased in bone for protection and further protected from shocks by the cerebral spinal fluid which circulates through the brain. We are going to know about this fluid again in the later slides. So again, the same thing is given here, the division of the nerve. The brain has three major regions, the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. And now let us look at what is the hindbrain. It is the site of some of the most primitive and basic functions. And it comprises of the medulla oblongata, the pons, and the cerebellum. If you look at the diagram, it will be more clear for you. What is the medulla oblongata? It is an elongated structure at a point where the spinal cord enters the skull and joins with the brain. It helps to keep us alive by entirely controlling the heart rate and largely controlling our breathing, swallowing, and digestion. The pons serves as a kind of relay station, and it contains the neurons which transmits the messages from the other parts of the body to the brain. Then we have the cerebellum. It controls all the bodily coordination, balance, and muscle tone. Now, what is the function of the midbrain? It is not very important in mammals, and it is the main source of control for visual and auditory information. And in mammals, these functions are mostly taken over by the forebrain. But it does help in controlling the eye movements, coordination, consciousness, which includes our sleeping, waking, then our attention, our cardiac functions, our respiratory functions, and also our. The forebrain is the region located towards the top and front of the brain, and it is the largest area of the brain. It has four parts: the limbic system, the thalamus and hypothalamus, and the cerebral cortex. The limbic system is responsible for our emotions, motivation, and learning. And the hippocampus plays an important role in. The amygdala is located below the hippocampus and it regulates our emotions. The septum is involved in anger and fear, and the thalamus is responsible for the incoming sensory information, and the basal ganglia constitute a set of structures close to the thalamus and hypothalamus that are involved in control of the movements as well as judgments and decisions. And the hypothalamus is the size of a kidney bean and controls the water balance in the tissues and blood streams, as well as many other functions of the autonomic nervous system. And then we have the cerebral cortex and the hemisphere. The cerebral hemisphere and the cerebral cortex, they together make up the cerebrum that sets us apart from other members of the animal kingdom. And it is responsible for our psychological functioning, our thinking, and cognitive processes. Now, what does the cerebral cortex does? It is actually the outer layer of the two rounded halves of the brain, the left and the right cerebral hemisphere. They look similar, but they functions quite differently. The left hemisphere is specialized for some kind of activities, while the other kind of activities. The corpus callosum is a dense body of nerve cells, and it connects the two cerebral hemisphere. The Broca's area is a structure in the left frontal lobe, and it is involved in the movements of the mouth needed for the speech, and it is also involved in the ability to speak grammatically. Now let us look at what is this Wernicke's area. It is located in the temporal lobe of the left hemisphere of the brain, and it involved in language comprehension. And it is said that 90% of the adult population has language functions predominantly localized within the left hemisphere. The four lobes of the brain, they are has different functions. The frontal lobe is responsible for abstract reasoning and motor processing, somatosensory processing of the sensation in the skins and muscles of the body takes place in the parietal lobe. Then temporal lobe takes charge of the auditory processing, and visual processing is being done in the occipital lobe. So again, this flow chart, like the previous one, it shows the different parts of the central nervous system as well as the functions. Then we have an important structure in the brain which are called the ventricles, and they are four irregular shaped cavities, and they house the cerebrospinal fluid. It is secreted continuously at a rate of 0.5 milliliter per minute, and CSF is a clearly slightly alkaline fluid with a specific gravity of 1.1005, consisting of water, mineral salts, glucose, plasma protein, creatinine, and urine. So this is the diagram of the ventricles showing the four different ventricles. The ventricles are a series of interconnected fluid-filled spaces, as we have already discussed. The same thing has been repeated in this slide to give you a more detailed understanding of the brain. The CNS, the central nervous system, is very, very important, and in order to protect it, the bone protects the central nervous system, and which is called the skull, while the spinal cord is protected by the vertebra of the spinal column, and The brain and the spinal cord are both covered with a protective tissue known as meninges. The entire central nervous system is immersed in a substance known as cerebrospinal fluid, and which helps the nerves fibers to transmit information to all the parts of the body and to the different parts of the brain, and as well as offering yet another layer for the protection of the brain from damage. Thank you.